All right, so here we are 10 days until election day. I mean, it is crunch time. Tomorrow, we're in the single digits. So every day, every hour, every minute in this campaign matters for both campaigns. The time needs to be preciously spent. So we are not going to actually look at the Electoral College map today. We're going to go ahead and hold off until tomorrow looking at that, because I think more and more it's becoming more and more apparent that the election might be focused on Pennsylvania. It does look like Wisconsin and Michigan are going really well for the Democrats, and that it's Pennsylvania that is make or break for both campaigns. It looks like it's going to be the Florida in 2000, that Pennsylvania will be taking that mantle and running with it, being the key state. So we're going to focus on Pennsylvania today, and we'll get to the electoral map tomorrow. So most of you know that I've been kind of worried about Pennsylvania for the last few days. It just seems like the numbers are getting worse and worse and worse for Democrats. And what's happening is that more Republicans are becoming a composition of the vote compared to what we've seen in other elections. And in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how the vote looked up to this day, the 10th day of the election in 2020 and 2022, to get an idea where the vote is right now for both the Democrats and Republicans. Because to be quite honest with you, the Democrats look like they're lagging behind quite a bit. So let me go ahead and show you the first slide, which is the composition of key counties of the Democratic vote so far with 10 days left to go, and where we were at that same point in 2020 and 2022. All right, so what we have here is the Democratic composition of the vote. What percentage of the vote right now are registered Democrats in these 5 key counties? Now, if you see Allegheny County, where Pittsburgh is, back in 2020 and 2022, they were in the mid to high 70s. Now they are at 70% and on track to go under 70%, which is not good. When we look at Philadelphia, the drop is a little bit less, but it is still concerning as well. Now, Montgomery County and Bucks County have asterisks next to them, mostly because we have some incomplete data, not much, just a little bit. So these might be off by about 1%, but not much more. But you can see in Montgomery County, of that being off a little bit, 73.3% of the early vote was Democratic. 2022, that went down to 71, but now we're at 63.8, which is a significant loss. Delaware County, same thing. This data here is fine. So we can see in 2020, Delaware County went from 70.1%, and 2022 was kind of the same, but now we're at 62.1%, a precipitous drop. So finally, Bucks County, you can see the data's a little bit off. That's why the asterisk is there. But you can see in 2020 and 2022 that around 68% of the vote was Democratic. Right now, we are at 55.8% of that vote. Now, conversely, if we go ahead and look at what the Republicans have done, they have been able to rise in every single one of these counties. So in Allegheny County, going from 15.3% of the composition of the pre-election day votes to 20.6%. That is a big jump. So if we go to Philadelphia, we do see a little bit of a jump. We do see a decent jump in Montgomery County from 16.6 to 24.9. Delaware County has a bit of a jump too, but if we look at Bucks County, we can see they went from, even with a little bit of incomplete data, and I really stress only a little bit, we see 20.6% of Republicans were the composition of that vote. They're now at 32.7. That is a huge, huge number. As you can see, the Democratic numbers are quite a bit down. Now, the important thing to remember about 2020 and 2022, even though somebody might say it's a midterm or COVID year or whatever, the numbers were very much the same or very close. And if we look at the election results, the same thing in each of these counties. They pretty much mirrored each other and were very close when we looked at these. So we can look at these other 2 elections because one was COVID and another was post-COVID. One was, pre-Dobbs and all the other stuff. The other one was post-Dobbs, post-January 26th. Right, so there are similarities when it comes to partisan, composition of this vote. And we can see right now, it is very, very much lagging. Now, of course, I just want to present the data because what does this mean? Well, we don't know what it means. I don't know what it means. People who are going to comment on this video don't know what it means, because anything that we can guess as to what it is purely hypothetical. So somebody might say, oh, well, we're going to get 10% of Republicans. Hypothetical. Oh, the Democrats are going to turn out on election day. Hypothetical. Oh, more women this time are voting Democratic than men. Hypothetical. And this is one of the problems when we look at this data and then just try to guess or give a reason as to why this data is the way it is, instead of trying to figure out from this data what the next moves can be, if it's a worry or not, or so on. So any type of guess right now as far as why this is, that's kind of like being in a football game just 3 minutes into the third quarter, your team's down by 3, and you're already trying to determine what the final score is and who caught the winning touchdown. It's just absolutely hypothetical. Now, one of the things that people might talk about are the two elections I'm looking at. One is a COVID election. One is actually a midterm election. Now, the important thing here is we're not talking about turnout rates by method of voting. We're talking about the composition of early vote. And as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, when we look at the composition in 2020 and 2022, it's very similar. And these were, elections that were different. One was COVID, one was post-COVID. And a lot of other events happened in between then. So in this situation, we do see similarities. So we easily can go ahead and compare these two elections. And to kind of put the kibosh on all of this, the Republicans in Delaware County are already 2,000 votes higher than they were in 2020, a big record turnout year where people could just mail in their ballots, whereas the Democrats right now are under 12,000 votes from their 2020 target. So if the whole idea is that we're talking about voter turnout and whatnot, the Republicans have already surpassed their 2020 numbers. So the last thing I want to talk about are, where are the Democratic voters? Now, the Republican voters, or a lot of people are talking about how they are election day voters from 2020, now voting early. That's fine. I don't care. But where are the Democratic voters? Because when we started this whole entire thing and I started putting up the numbers for the early vote, everyone just talked about, oh, well, Democrats vote early, so the early numbers are going to, favor Democrats. Now, all of a sudden, we've had a shift in tactic, and now everyone's saying, oh, no, Democrats are going to vote on Election Day. How did we go in 2 weeks from everyone saying, oh, the early numbers help Democrats to, oh, now we're on Election Day, right? Because we've had this change. And why are we having this change? As I just said a few minutes ago, we don't know why we're having this change. It's absolutely pure speculation. But what we are talking about is changing a voting method that Democrats had done for years, either in-person early voting, which is not a thing really in Pennsylvania because everything is vote by mail as far as the early votes are concerned. So you still have to request a ballot and whatnot. It's a whole convoluted way compared to how we do the in-person voting in other states when we do early voting. But we are making this shift where all of a sudden it seems like, or at least people are trying to come up with the excuse of that we're making this shift from early voting to election day voting, even though nobody has been given the cue to do that. Now, a lot of people talk about Donald Trump and say, oh, Donald Trump told his people to vote early in this election. Okay, that's the cue. Where have the Harris campaign ever said, hey, everyone, don't vote early, vote on election day? I haven't heard it. So there's absolutely no rationality as to why all of a sudden we expect a bunch of people there on election day and to totally change what we have done in the past. I just don't see it. Now, some people might be complaining about vote by mail and stuff like that. And you know what? That's legitimate, but you can drop a lot of these ballots off at a drop box. You can drop a lot of these ballots off at the elections office in your county. So there are other ways that you can do this, that you can mitigate any worries about something being fraudulently submitted on your behalf or someone stealing your ballot or whatever. There are safety guards in there for those situations. But again, we're talking about a total shift in the way in which people vote. And if we look at states like Georgia, North Carolina, Arizona, Nevada, we see that the Republicans are doing well there too. As a matter of fact, in North Carolina, the Republicans are ahead in early voting, yet Sherry Beasley, Raphael Warnock did quite well in the early vote back in 2022. So this whole thing about Democrats shifting to election day voting doesn't seem to be based on any factual information, doesn't seem to be based on any cues that we see from the Democratic Party or from the Harris campaign. It just seems to be speculation as to why the Democratic vote right now is not looking good in early voting. And hey, this could be the possibility. This could be what happens. I don't know. You don't know. I don't know. The people in the comments don't know. We just don't know. And to guess what the score is of a football game 3 minutes into the third quarter, that's not the best thing to do either. And that's kind of where we're at. So I just want to do this video about Pennsylvania because I do think we are at the point where the alarms need to be sounded. The Harris campaign has a lot more data than we do, but we're kind of relying on a lot of things that haven't happened in the past, such as 10% of Republicans or Democrats shifting to election day voting. We're relying on a lot of things that we just have not seen for Democrats in a while. So that to me seems like a very, very risky campaign move. And just want to know, why have Democrats been, pretty much falling behind when it gets these early votes, especially when many of the people out there in the comments were talking about, oh, early votes always favor Democrats. We're not hearing that tune anymore. All right, thank you all very much for joining me. Have a wonderful day wherever it is you are. I'll talk to you in the next video. Bye-bye.